text line. Happy to be joined now by Trey Lamar. He is the representative from District 8, primarily Tate County, and is chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee. You can follow Trey on X if you would like to at TLamar44. Good morning, Representative Lamar. How are you?
Good morning, Richard. Glad to be with you today.
Trey, really appreciate some of your time. Lots going on, including a new fiscal report for the state of Mississippi. You are, I'm sure, knee-deep, if not neck-deep, in that report and all the other things that are going on financially with your role with Ways and Means. What's there? What do we need to know coming out of this newest fiscal report?
So, yeah, Richard, you're right. We just last week received the fiscal report. We get those monthly, but the significance of the one we just received is that it wrapped up the first quarter of our fiscal year and showed that we were around $45 million above the estimate for the current fiscal year. So good news overall.
Can you walk us through, and I know this is a loaded question, the budgeting process that
Sure.
that you guys look at when you're talking about from a legislative standpoint? Obviously, the governor has priorities, the speaker has priorities, the lieutenant governor has priorities. You've got to try and coalesce all those things together and do as much good as you can for the entire state of Mississippi while maintaining fiscal responsibility.
No, I think you said it exactly as accurate as I could say it. I mean, you've got all of those offices have their own priorities. And so, the governor presents his executive budget report to us as the Joint Legislative Budget Committee. And then that's done really right before the legislative session starts. And then the legislature comes in and obviously the House and the Senate work through the budget process as the session goes on. Most sessions are a 3-month session. Thankfully, the first year of the first term is a 4-month session, which is what we just came off of. And when you add that extra month on there, it feels like you added a year onto the session. But thankfully, we're not rolling into another 4-month session this year. It'll be a 3-month session. And then throughout that process, the House and the Senate work together to craft a budget. Most of the time, it comes down to the last couple weeks of the session. And that's really by design because that's when we have our most recent forecast and budgetary information at that point in time toward the end of the session, which is really the last couple weeks of March, first week of April, sometime in that time frame. And we try to put the budget together based on the priorities of those 3 offices and what the forecasts look like. And then we have economists and a budget office that helps us predict, what the forecasts are, 1 year out, 2 year out, 3 years out, those types of things. And that's what we base our budget off of. And it's certainly not an exact process. It's messy at times. Some people may think that it's just dealing with numbers. Well, yes, it is dealing with numbers, but it's also dealing with a whole lot of personalities and politics. And you throw that into the pot, and it gets interesting, and some would say it gets fun. So that's the process, though.
45 million ahead of projections. You said I don't want to call that a surplus. Certainly not in the first quarter report. But
yeah.
Where did that over projection amount come from primarily?
So let's talk through that. So a lot of people it's important to note that we've got the 2016 tax cuts and the 2022 tax cuts are being phased in. So it's important for the people to understand that $45 million above the estimate is taking into account those tax cuts. So we are growing, even though we have chosen in the past to implement tax reform. And I think most of your audience knows that we in the legislature, through the House, the governor's office, and the Senate are talking about further tax reform. And so that's a big topic, probably going to be the predominant.
Talking about is a
topic.
Nice way to put that.
That's right. We're coming off just in the last 2 weeks a summit that the speaker headlined in Jackson, where we had several speakers come and over 500 in attendance. I was glad to talk and be one of the speakers and presenters at event, along with a lot of other people a whole lot smarter than me. But we were able to talk about the current state of the budget here in Mississippi, and our economy, both our private sector economy and our public sector economy. What that looks like and what it looks like going forward, and just getting right down to it, the real talk, if you will, about eliminating the tax on work in the state and becoming the 10th state in the union to not tax people's work. And that's a goal of mine, and that's what we're looking at.
So it certainly is a debate that has been significant over the last couple of years. I don't know if his position has changed. I know that a year or so ago I interviewed Delbert Hosemann, the lieutenant governor, and he was a little more reticent to go on with a full elimination of the income tax. And his stance, if I remember correctly, Trey, was that, his concern was, where do you make up that revenue? You talk about growth in the economy and in the revenue for Mississippi, despite the fact that some of those previous tax reform measures have now rolled into place and there's still extra money. So I guess I would ask you from that standpoint, when you look at lost revenue, where do you make that up?
So, yeah, it's a good question. And I would point all of our listeners to the following. We have increased revenue about $2 billion over the last few years here in the state of Mississippi. And with that, we have increased spending about $1 billion. And we have taken care of some of our real needs. We have put more money in the last 3 years into K-12 education than we've ever put in that period of a time, that small 3-year time period in the history of the state. We had a record and historic teacher pay raise. We've got a historic K-12 funding formula that we just passed this past year that just put literally right around $600 million in new recurring revenue into K-12 education. We've made real strides at the Department of Corrections, the Department of Mental Health, Child Protection Services, all these areas of the state where state services needed some additional attention. We've done that, and we're still just finished the last fiscal year $1 billion ahead of where we were before. In addition to that, people don't think about this. We've got a full rainy day fund, which means we've got a savings account that is 10% of our state budget that's just sitting there. That's, if we take a downturn, that's what that money is for. It's about $700 million that just sits there that doesn't get touched because of our conservative fiscal budgeting practices over the last several years. So the tax dollars in the state of Mississippi, the listeners need to know, are being well taken care of. We've invested heavily in infrastructure, roads, bridges, water, sewer, from the state of Tennessee to the Mississippi Gulf Coast at record numbers in the last several years. So we're able to do all those things and still run $1 billion surplus. And with that, it's time to start talking about how we responsibly can phase out the tax on work in the state of Mississippi. And so to get right to answer your question, that will be my job when it comes to Lieutenant Governor. I respect him. I've worked with him for many years now, and it's my job, along with others, to convince him why eliminating the tax on work in the state of Mississippi is the right thing to do, and show him specifically how we can afford it. Well, we'll start with we're $1 billion ahead of where we should be, or what we have to spend in the state. In addition to that, our private sector is growing like crazy, and we hope to continue that over the next several years. And so we start ahead, and then we phase it in a responsible time frame, and we talked about that at the forum, and that's how we will eliminate the tax on work going forward. And that would be my proposal going forward for this next session, and we'll see where it goes.
Visiting with Trey Lamar, representative from District 8. He's chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee. You got time to hang with us for one more segment?
Sure do.
Let me ask you this before we go to the break. Got about a minute until the break. In terms of current revenue generated from the state income tax, where is that number? How much revenue comes from state income tax? Or
it's right around tax, it's right around $2 billion right now. Right around $2 billion, and that's it. So
okay.
It's a lot of money now, but if you do it over time, especially when you consider we're $1 billion ahead of what we're spending, and the state of Mississippi historically has grown at around 3% clip. So you add almost $8 billion in collections and 3%. That's almost $250 million a year that we're growing. So as I said at the tax summit, you could take $150 million per year of that and put it to buy down the state income tax and still grow government at the clip of $100 million a year, just using historical growth averages.
We'll pick up on the other side of this timeout, visiting with Trey Lamar from the House of Representatives and chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee. Back with you after this on the Gallo Radio Show on SuperTalk, Mississippi. Back with you on this 7th of October, Monday morning. Thanks for being with us on the Gallo Radio Show on SuperTalk, Mississippi. Richard Cross, Lance in Studio X, and we're joined by Trey Lamar from his office in Tate County. Member of the House of Representatives, chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee. We're talking tax reform, potential elimination of the work tax in the state of Mississippi. And Trey, I want to be careful not to get too wonky and too numbers heavy before 8 o'clock on Monday morning. But I was thinking about what you said during the break and was trying to kind of make all of that make sense. So about $2 billion generated in revenue from state income tax for workers in Mississippi. You were talking about operating at a $1 billion surplus for the state, the rainy day fund in place there for an emergency if needed. Is the important part to understand, and I'm asking this for me, that this is a phased approach. This is not we pass it in 2025 and in 2026 there's no longer a state income tax in Mississippi. It has to happen over a period of years. But because if it's wiped out all at once, I struggle to see where the numbers actually work as much as I would like for them to.
No, Richard, you're exactly right. And that's where I think some people get lost in this debate. They're like, man, how are we just going to cut $2 billion out of our the state revenue on day one? Well, nobody's proposing that. And that's the detractors are using that as an opportunity to confuse those that want to intelligently discuss this issue. And that's just not the case. Nobody's proposing that. I mean, we've got a track record of phasing in responsibly tax cuts over a period of time. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. So would I love to just cut the tax on work day one? Yeah, but you'd have to replace that immediately, or at least the majority of it, with some other additional revenues. So, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about what can we do now? What is a large part of the cut that we could do now to jumpstart it? And then, how can we responsibly phase out the rest of it over a period of time? And that's what we had at our summit 2 weeks ago, and then at the tax hearings that myself and Chairman Bounds have been chairing over the last several months, we've heard from several speakers, and that's what the states around us are doing that we are not on some island here. In fact, I'll give you most recently, the state of Louisiana is right now about to go into a special session to discuss tax reform. This past year, the state of Arkansas went ahead and passed a law to reduce their income tax to 3.9%. And I wonder where they got that 3.9%. They got it because we had already gone to 4%. So that's not lost on me. The state of Tennessee has, been a no income tax state for a long period of time. But you look outside of just our neighbors, look at the state of Kentucky, look at the state of Arizona, and I could go on and on. The state of North Carolina. These are all states that are looking at and have taken serious steps toward reducing the income tax. And if this is where the majority of the conservative states in the country are going, then I want the state of Mississippi to be at the front of that and lead the pack on that. And I've said that many times. And there is no reason why that the state of Mississippi, with the conservative leadership that we have in place through the House of Representatives, the Senate, and the governor's office, should not have the most competitive tax code in the entire nation. And I don't mean number 19 or number 16. I'm talking about number 1. And that's where I want to be, the best in the country. And hopefully we can get there.
How does this work in conjunction with some of the major economic projects that are going? Because we know that there are incentives that are in place to bring major projects into Mississippi. Those incentives tail off over time so that ultimately there is increased tax revenue from the businesses who are operating here, but in a very competitive market, those incentives are advantageous, right? They make sense long term. Is that where you look at potential continued growth in overall revenues over a long period of time? And is it dependent on continuing to have success in bringing projects in like this?
Yeah, well, it's it's literally a hand in glove approach. I mean, if you think about it, the incentives that are out there that are designed, we have to compete with other states to bring these quality jobs to the people of Mississippi. But if you're a CEO or you're a chairman of a corporate board, Richard, and you're looking at where is my next facility or where is my company going to relocate to, think about it from this standpoint. If you can go to a no income tax, sure. If you can go to a no income tax state and all of a sudden your employees don't have to pay income tax, well, your employees are better off. They've essentially just gotten a raise if they're moving here from a income tax state. It costs you nothing, and that's what's best for their employees. And so, yeah, this tax reform we're looking at works hand in glove with the economic development and the really international recruitment that the state of Mississippi is doing these days to bring great jobs to Mississippians.
This is a conversation that is not going away anytime soon. Representative Trey Lamar from District 8 joining us this morning. Thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, enjoyed it as always. Thank you, Richard, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds great. Trey Lamar, chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee. 8 o'clock hour coming up. First, it's the news. We're back with you right after this.